Hi there, and welcome back to Good Distinctions. I'm your host, Will Wright. And Good Distinctions are the spice of life. I'm very honored today to be joined by Dan Oblinger. Dan, welcome to the podcast.
Will, it's my pleasure.
Excellent. So, Dan, we'll start off with what's your day job? What do you do normally?
Well, now that's an interesting question because it radically changed on last Friday.
Perfect.
So I am retired.
Well, congratulations.
I do
I guess I
nothing.
should say, what did you do?
Up until Friday, I was a law enforcement officer and I was a hostage negotiator.
Excellent. How long did you do that for?
21 years and 7 months is what the plaque says. So I'm going to trust the city's good math.
Excellent. And which city is that? I know you're from Kansas.
Yeah, so I worked for the city of Wichita in Kansas. So I am a member of the Diocese of Wichita in Kansas.
Beautiful. Do you know Bishop Olmsted?
Yes, I did know
Perfect.
Bishop Olmsted.
Yeah,
Yes.
he's great. That's my former bishop here in Phoenix, Bishop Emeritus. Great man.
Yes, you'd like to think we had something to do with that in Wichita, although that's probably not true.
He speaks fondly of Wichita. And I know we also have some mutual friends, Chris Stewart and Tony Brandt of Casting Nets Ministries.
Casting Nets Ministries, yes. I will vouch for them, although I may pay I may pay the price later for doing that.
They're phenomenal guys. I met them when they came to my parish and did a parish mission. Had them out a couple times, and they're just phenomenal. So hostage negotiation. You did this for 21 years. What does that entail? I've seen a lot of movies, of course, where there's hostage negotiation. It's very tense. There's always rain, lots of people shouting, and then all of a sudden you just come like this white knight.
Yeah,
he's here.
Straight
is that how it goes?
With my hair just perfect. Yeah, it's nothing like that. The hostage negotiation. What's it like? I can answer that by saying what it's about. What it's about is powerful communication. And to unpack that, what it really means is authentic listening. So the role of the hostage negotiator is not to craft the perfect appeal, and it's certainly not to look the best. Oftentimes we're never seen by either the suspect or anyone in our work. It's mostly done by phone. But it's the listening that's the thing. The listening is what forms the relationship with the suspect or subject and creates the rapport. And through that is the surrender or the solution. So if you wanted to boil down hostage negotiation to one word, it'd be listening. If you wanted to boil it down to two words, it would be rapport and influence. And so it's a job of humility, which is not captured by the movies.
Well, and it seems like there's a lot of overlap there with the spiritual life, which I'd like to kind of probe in a second. But I guess I should say for my listeners, why have you on the podcast? How did I find you? Well, it really there's two reasons. One is sort of silly, and one is quite legitimate. The silly one is just I've always wanted to talk to somebody who's a hostage negotiator, and so I went on LinkedIn and typed in hostage negotiator, and then we had mutual connections, and it just all worked out. So I thank you for coming on. But the other thing is, Good Distinctions is based on St. Thomas Aquinas's maxim of seldom affirm, never deny, always distinguish. And that can't be done without listening, without actually listening. Because you're not sort of just saying, oh, yeah, for sure, to everything. It's seldom affirm. But you're never denying. You don't hear something and say, well, that's completely wrong. Because most of the time when someone says something, there is a kernel of truth.
Yes.
Or there's at least a perceived good.
Yes.
And so then what do? We always distinguish. We always make distinctions. And that's where sort of the thrust of this podcast, Good Distinctions, comes from. And so I think hostage negotiation has a lot of overlap. But before we get into the spiritual, I'd like to talk more about listening. What is listening? I know there's sort of 8 aspects of active listening, or I've been told. I watched a couple of your videos before the podcast. So
yeah, somebody's been doing their homework. I like it.
So what is active listening?
Well, I mean, it's Aquinas, right? I mean, the Summa is dialogue, right?
Mm-hmm.
With his intellectual distinctions, and you know that when you read Sed Contra. So he's having a conversation for you in both theology and philosophy, I would argue, and you then that allows you to see where the truth lies. It allows you to follow the reasoning, because he handles the objections in an odd but really beautiful sort of dialogue. Listening is nothing without dialogue. The distinctions of hostage negotiation or crisis negotiation are made in dialogue, and so the art, or you can say the substance of the dialogue for us, is the listening piece. If we don't faithfully capture what the other person's trying to tell us, if we don't take their perspective, then you will never see the creative solution to the problem. And more importantly, they will not see you as a person that they want to do business with in order to come to a peaceful resolution. It's the act of listening that opens the doors of the mind for the other person to be open to a solution to their problem that they hadn't seen before. That's it. And so it's sleight of hand, like intellectually, but it's an act of humility to set aside what you want, which is surrender, right? For them to live, but also if this is a hostage situation, for them to allow others to go free. And instead of pushing for that and insisting on that and compelling that and convincing, like the verbs of I like to say natural conflict resolution, right? To compel and convince, right? To cajole, right? The actual verb is to listen, and through that to persuade. So in the finest tradition of Aquinas, we're going to allow the argument that is poor to be voiced. That's listening. That's the discipline of listening. That's the pain of listening, is that somebody's going to tell you everything you don't want to hear. And it's not in knowing it. That's the other distinction with listening. It's not in knowing that argument. I probably already know it. I've been doing it for 13 years, 21 years in law enforcement. Like, I know what they're going to say, but they've got to tell me. And it's that act of receiving. So, and that's the humility, right? And so that forms a relationship. The actual solution, the actual negotiation and the resolution comes from the relationship formed between listener and storyteller. And if you don't allow that to form, you don't give it time and attention and attentiveness, it won't form, right? And so that's it. So there's certainly skills to it. You can take listening and break it down into constituent acts. Like, I call them habits. I mean, it's really what it is. They're virtues. And there's 8 of them for sure. I mean, you can get into the weeds a little bit and say maybe there's 9, maybe there's 7, but really there's a discernible 8. And the more you make that your habitude in communicating with people, first of all, the warmer you'll have relationships, the more you'll know about everything in your environment. But then what's interesting is the reciprocity piece. I'll just kind of end on that, is if you become really good at listening to people, people will want you to tell them things. And you won't have to spend very much time or effort telling them a few things and finding that they adopt them, finding that they find them valuable. It's very interesting. It's been a long road to get there, but more and more I find the less I talk, the more I listen, the more people value the words that I do choose to use. So if I'm a salesman selling listening, maybe that's the final sales pitch. But it truly is. You'll have warmer relationships, and people will come to you and tell you about things that you should know anyhow. And there's a certain satisfaction in that only comes in laying down your own stories, which is hard to do.
Well, and it makes sense. I've heard this statistic mentioned, and I'm not sure where it was from, and I can't source it. But I believe it is probably closer to the truth than not. Is that the generation that's in high school today, middle school, high school today, spends more time at home with their parents than any previous generation in history, and yet they're the most lonely. They're the most disconnected, which is horrific to think about, but it bears truth in my own experience in a high school setting as well as in other relationships, is that when you actually do listen to someone, when you actually hear them say something that's important to them, they light up. I mean, it's a completely different person standing in front of you. They're not disconnected and lonely. There's a connection and you feel it. It's real. And kind of to your point, they'll come and tell you things that you're not asking for, maybe at the wrong time. I've had students just sort of
over the wrong time.
always, well, they'll just like wander into my classroom when it's not their turn, not their time in my classroom, and just start talking. I'm like, I'm in the middle of a lecture. Like, I love you. Come back later.
Yeah.
But there's definitely a rapport just from listening, just from having that connection. So when it comes to these principles, I mean, I assume that these principles are applicable whether it's in a high stress situation. I mean, these people that you're talking to on the phone in crisis negotiation, this is probably one of the worst days of their life, all put together. Whereas the normal, everyday sort of conversations you have with whomever, probably not as high stress. But are they the same virtues? Is it the same way of listening,
None of
or
it
is there
changes.
something different?
None of it changes. It's all the same. It's easier for me. This is the dirty secret of a hostage negotiator, who's a classically trained philosopher. It's easier for me to do it as a hostage negotiator in a hostage negotiation. And I could give you stories. I can think about the most recent one we were involved in.
Yeah, sure.
But the stakes are so high, and you know it. And so everything, everyone on that, and it's a team sport. I mean, that's the other thing to mention. So everyone on the team knows this is it. This is what you prepare. Imagine, I mean, this is it. I mean, Will, tell me the story of when you proposed to your wife.
All right. So I went into a church. We prayed a rosary because I was stressed out of my mind, and why not? And we go to leave. Right. And well, when we go to leave the church, we're the only two people in the church. I worked there, so I had a key. And it was nighttime, beautiful. Everything was lit up just nice. We both genuflected. My wife gets up. I stayed down. And there's the ring.
Okay.
And she said yes. And then she wouldn't like me telling this, but she doesn't watch my podcast anyway. She jumped over a curb because she was so excited. So
I love this, right?
Yeah.
You're gonna listen to this one. So okay, so this is a wonderful story. First of all, it's beautiful. Secondly, I would expect nothing less. But thirdly, like in that moment, when you go back to that moment in time, like you were up for it, like you knew this is it. This is the most important question you're gonna ask. You said everything right. Get the environment right. Got her mind right. You got Mary going for you, right? All the Catholic things, right? It's easy. And now, what if I asked, like, the last time that you asked your wife to go out to dinner with you, right? Totally different experience without going into that, right? So for me, it's simple. I have the gift of knowing that the stakes are so high and having a team around me. And you have practiced your whole career for this. And then I'm going to go on an average Tuesday evening and try to have a conversation with a 16-year-old son about growing up and becoming a man. A conversation that I try to have all the time. And then do you know what the stakes are then? The mundane is what's dangerous in communication and relationship. It's the conversation you have over and over again. One thing I tell my private sector clients when we talk about the importance of listening and the stakes is like, imagine this is the last conversation you're ever going to have with that person. Some terrible tragedy is going to take them out of your life next week, and you didn't know that. This is the last chance. What would you tell them then? How well would you listen to them then? How important is this conversation now? And the fact of the matter is, you don't know. And so the stakes are that high all the time. It's just that I have the gift as a hostage negotiator to know that, to have presence. That's how important listening is. It's how we honor other people, and we don't know, like, everyone's a gift. So it's taking those skills and making them virtues, because you'll need them when it's the mundane Tuesday afternoon conversation, and you want to be up for it. And the only way that's going to happen is if it's habitude. Even
you don't slip into virtue,
right?
It's
even
not
the
an
most
accident.
Unrehearsed, even the most like untrained listener. Take the average man who has probably no training in active listening, right? If his wife comes in and says, "I'm thinking of leaving you," that guy's going to be a really good listener for about 20 minutes, right? Because that's what fear and adrenaline and hope can do. Like, they can galvanize you, right? But it can't last very long, and it's not going to sustain the relationship, because it's got to be done every day. And so that's where the habits come in. Yeah, to your point, you can't fake that for very long. Like you can only
Mm-hmm.
be attentive for so long without substance to that as a habit. So that is the value of the training I've had as a hostage negotiator for every aspect of my life.
Well, the stakes make sense. The mundane sort of repetitive notion, and I love that notion that you brought up of what if this is the last conversation you have with someone. That's so important to remember. I mean, right now, recording this, it's going to come out in Lent as well. Lent is the perfect time to be thinking about our own demise. I interviewed a Benedictine priest last week, and he said, we're trained to keep death ever before
They're
us.
training for death their whole life. Yeah.
Right. And that's what we all should be doing. That memento mori spirit of remember your death. Time is fleeting. And so it's important to remember that in other people's lives as well. Because when we start to see individuals, other people as persons, we start to see them as beloved creatures, beloved sons and daughters of God who are infinite. I mean, they're eternal beings. So, a conversation that you have with someone now, their soul doesn't die.
Mm-hmm.
So it's sort of this fascinating sort of different take. It's a very different take than the world offers us, where we're all material and natural, and one day we'll die, and it's all nihilistic. And so it's a very hopeful thing to think about our death, because what's the difference between before death and after death is that we can do something now as far as our own salvation is concerned, and as far as influencing others. I don't know if influencing is the right word, but it seems to me that there's a lot of these principles that are applicable in evangelization, right? In sharing the faith. You have to be a good listener. I'm from North Carolina, so Billy Graham comes to mind. Billy Graham says you have to build a bridge to support the weight of truth. Build a bridge of trust, right? You have to build a bridge of trust to support the weight of truth. He also says you have to catch the fish before you can skin it and scale it. But same metaphor, different application. But it's the same sort of ideas that we have to be in relationship with people. And you're saying you can do this with these habits, these virtues, very quickly, right? You have to build that rapport in crisis negotiation, I assume, very as quickly as possible.
It's quicker in those situations because the crisis provides the compression.
Mm-hmm.
In a crisis, everything's compressed. So trust formation is compressed, empathy is compressed. So the listening process is compressed because there's an obvious and compelling story. So it's very simple for me to find the story that should be told. It's the one about what happened tonight to get to this point, right? I'll give you another example. So in my parish, we have the 8th sacrament, which is coffee and donuts after Mass. I think every parish should have that because it's an opportunity for evangelization and fellowship. So this past Sunday, coming out of Mass, my wife's in charge of coffee and donuts, which is a very auspicious, obviously, role in the parish. So I wander in, and as a father of 6, right, survive in advance is often like your strategy for coffee and donuts. Like, okay, everybody get their stuff. Please don't bite anybody, right? Just bite the donut. Let's get through this. Okay. But to know that, again, this is perspective taking. Like, this is the foundational stuff for a hostage negotiator. It's made me a better coffee and donut participant. To know that, although my perspective as a father and a father of 6 and husband is to not embarrass my wife, not to be embarrassed by my children and shepherd them out of here, is to remember everyone at Coffee and Donuts is there for a different reason, and to see them that way, and not just look at everything as a father would, as I would, right? But to see with the eyes of someone else, to be able to say, oh, there's a young lady with a small baby sitting by herself, right? To your point, we live in obviously we live with thousands and hundreds of thousands of people around. Imagine New York City, you're surrounded by millions of people, literally. You're in China and there's 100,000 people in your building, right? And you're lonely. And so we're surrounded by people, and yet loneliness is certainly, I think it's the greatest epidemic. The fentanyl crisis is not, it's a symptom, okay? And it's a symptom of the loneliness epidemic. And that's my belief. And so to begin to see lonely people, or at least see people that don't have anybody right now, which is the first warning sign of loneliness, right? And to go and sit down and say, why are you here? And to find out she's not Catholic. And she's considering conversion, and she wants to have a conversation about the faith. And she was
Mm.
hoping that the Holy Spirit would, she's very well churched. So she knew the Holy Spirit would send somebody. And you're looking at your copy going, I guess that somebody's me. And it doesn't matter your theological training. That's not what brings people to the faith. It's personal invitation, right?
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah. That's the advantage of being Catholic. You don't need to know anything about the faith. You got a catechism? You got a phone? Can you put CCC into the Google? All right. Then we can have a theological conversation. You better love Jesus, and you better believe the church, right? So in terms of like being a Catholic from a Catholic perspective through evangelization. But the listening piece is a training to recognize when there's stories to be told, right? And that you're the one to receive them and not tell them. And I think that is a vital training for people that want to be good humans and certainly good followers of Christ. So, because you could see it all through the gospel, Jesus is a story monger. Like he's looking for people to tell him stories. And that's, again, to my point. It's not about the knowledge. He already knew. It's the act of telling. And it's really then the act of receiving the story, right? It's that exchange that builds relationships. And Christ modeled that for us in the Gospels. It's all through the Old Testament. The Bible is a collection of stories about Christ. And so how fast do we get away from that? And we think in terms of theological facts. You should be a Catholic because here's 10 facts why you should be Catholic. No. They tell their story, and then you tell them Christ's story. And that's usually all that's needed. It just might take a couple years. So.
Well, that's
it.
That's a really solid way to look at it. I don't think I've thought about Jesus as a story monger, as you said. I love that. I mean, we think about Jesus telling stories, especially parables. We think about Jesus proclaiming the kingdom, but I don't think I've intentionally thought about Jesus receiving stories. But to your point, like he of all people knows them way better than the person who's telling them.
Think of on the synoptics, how many times he asked people what happened.
Yeah, right.
But he's there because he knows what happened. Like he arrives at the precise moment when he needs to. Yeah, even in terms of Lazarus, right? Like that's a great example. He knows what happened. He's there to make it right, but he invites them to tell him. Right, and to be careful to think that anything in the Gospels happens for one reason. Obviously, the greater reason would be that we get to see that exchange. But what are we seeing? We're seeing storytelling. When he's teaching, it's largely through stories, whether that's like the story of the kingdom or using parables. But when he's having these personal encounters with people, that's when it comes out. I mean, even like the woman who was to be stoned, right? He has this beautiful exchange with her. He didn't talk to the crowd, right? But he talks to her, and she tells a story. Like the woman at the well, he knows it. He proves that he knows it, and then he still has her tell it. Like it's storytelling. It's God created us for community, and communities are nothing if we're not exchanging stories. And so it's only right that it would be in our DNA. You go all the way back. This is what I teach in my classes. Like you go all the way back. What's the earliest evidence we have of civilization? It's cave paintings and hieroglyphics and inscriptions on tombs. Like we want to tell people about us. And so if you want to evangelize people and bring them to Christ, you have to let them tell you about them. It does you no good to launch into a beautiful oration about the Catholic Church and its beautiful history, right, and tradition, if you don't know what has brought them to the church. Yeah. So I think storytelling is just, once you see it that way, you won't unsee it in terms of knowing at the heart of what listening is. It's receiving people's stories. It's inviting them and then respecting them when they're told. And not and avoiding the temptation that will surely come for you to respond with your own story and to kind of hijack that storytelling.
No, that's a profoundly important thing you just said, because I don't know how I haven't thought about it in this way, but now that you said it, I'm never going to unhear this. It brings new meaning to like what Pope Paul VI said in Evangelii Nunciandi. He said, modern man listens more willingly to witnesses than to teachers. And if he does listen to teachers, it's because they're first witnesses, right? Well, where do we always go? We go, okay, well, we have to witness then. We have to tell our story, which is not what you're saying. And I love that. And it makes so much more sense because everything that I've learned in doing good catechetics is that you need to listen first. and then respond with the gospel, respond with Christ's story.
Mm-hmm.
Well, how do we witness? Well, we be Christ to others. And as you're saying, Christ listens. He
Yeah.
hears the story.
Yeah.
Um,
I would
and
even add, if I could, I would even, as a Catholic hostage negotiator, to all those out there who feel called to evangelize, who feel called to catechize, I would even add, there's a danger in, because you're right, though, that's often taught, it should be taught, is that we listen first, right, and then offer the truth. The danger in that is it becomes very apparent to people that you're simply listening long enough that or
right,
earn the right to then tell them what they should believe, and that we should insist that people ask us to be catechized and to be evangelized. That it's enough for us to know, to let them know that we have something if they ever want it, because people do. And it's when they say, please tell me about what you believe, that they give us that, they give value to that, they value that. It's when they say, tell me about Christ, that their mind and their heart is open to that. And that's that moment in time, right? Everything happens in a season, and certainly that's evangelization. Like everyone's conversion story, there were stutters and stops, and then they were ready, and then the right person was there to witness. The greater part of witnessing is witnessing to their story, so faithfully, by the way, that they, again, it's this weird reciprocity that I can't explain, but it's true, and you can experience it, and you probably have. Will, is this like, well, hey, you never hijacked my story. You heard me all the way to the end, to the bitter end, right? You know me, you get me, and that's a big part of hostage negotiation. Is that moment in rapport sealing, where the whole team, the coach and the team leader and scribe, everyone knows we got him. Like, it's sealed. They see the primary negotiator as a person who's here to help them, and they want the help. And everything after that just begins to, it's not a straight shot to surrender. Like, there's other things that will happen, but at that point, a lot of the risk has gone away. And it's the same playing out in all kinds of human encounters, where there's fear and there's strong emotions and there's shame and there's embarrassment. And this is the story of most adults, right? Coming to the church or coming to the faith late in life. So there's a lot of baggage. And so I just add that. It's like, don't just make it transactional. Don't just listen to them because you have to, because Will told me that in class, and I want to be able to share Christ with them. No. When you really know them and they get it, they know that you know them, you'll know exactly what to say about Christ and his church. And because they'll have told you what they want to know. And that's powerful.
Well, and that's the catechumenal model of the church as well. I mean, the church says that the RCIA way of doing things is the primary mode of catechesis for the church, is the model of catechesis. And if the OCIA or RCIA, whatever acronyms we're using these days, if you want to do it properly, that period of inquiry is not the time to tell your story. It's not the time to give them the truth. That's the catechumenate. That's later. The period of inquiry is just to shut up and listen.
Yes.
And then ask questions. And I love this. And it turns into like weeks of basically just probing deeper into their story. Where are they? Who are they? And you do build that rapport. And when you know intentionally that you're not trying to convert them, you're not trying to catechize them, you're literally just there to be the face of the church and to receive their story and show them that you care and show them that you're listening and that you want to know more and sort of building that rapport, building that relationship, so that when they say, okay, you know what, I am ready. I mean, it's exactly what you're saying. That's when you enter into the catechumenate, and it's very official. I mean, there's the rite of acceptance. Like the church even punctuates with these different rites. And I suppose it's the same thing in any relationship. I mean, you could think about dating someone. You say, hey, you want to go get a dinner with me? Hopefully they say yes. And if they do, then you're just going to dinner. Then that's all it is. But then you have to go to this part later where you say, well, hey, do you want to be my girlfriend?
Yeah,
and it's always awkward and kind of weird.
That's a higher level
right?
of commitment, right? Yeah.
Well, and so it's kind of this, and then you get to the point where you need to propose. And even if you've been ready to propose, the woman will make it clear. So if anybody's listening and you're dating someone,
this just became a dating episode. This is so good.
Okay, but honestly, like trust me, guys, like she will make it abundantly clear whether she wants to be with you for the rest of her life or not.
Yeah.
You just have to, listen.
It is. You know what's funny? So I work with like project managers who do business development or sale. Like they send proposals to clients with dollars on them, right?
Mhm.
And I'm always amazed how many will send that proposal, and when they click send, they're like, "Man, I hope they say yes." And I'm like, "Whoa, hang on." The training I do and the coaching I do with them is like, "No, you will never send that until you've had dialogue. You've called them and said, 'Hey, I've got the proposal ready. Just so you know, the price is looking like this.'" To get
Right.
the reaction to know if you should even send the proposal, because if they say no, then we that's dialogue. We can ask why, how come, or we can see what the number should be, and we can decide if that's what we want, or we may have to negotiate a little bit. But by the same token, my kids are getting to an age now with they and their peers. I'm like, yes, there's a lot of like totally unsolicited, unrequited, and totally unknown, like just do you want to go out? And I'm like, that's okay. But yeah, once we get to the state of proposal, if you don't know, you shouldn't be asking. Like,
Right. That
obviously you need to do more
presumes a
listening.
lot of doubt.
Yeah, you should have very low. Now there was a small amount of doubt when I proposed to my wife, but that's the right amount of doubt that she could always say no. It's consent based. But yeah, it the beautiful thing about listening is it clears the path for clarity. And I just can't say that enough. It's modern times are confusing. Being a Christian of any stripe, living in the United States right now, it's very confusing. And knowing your path and having the clarity of what you're called to do, there's certainly such a thing as spiritual listening, like holy listening, and that's important. Discernment, right? We're losing touch with that, with all the access we have to knowledge, with these things, right? And I think that's critical. But even in my life, the Holy Spirit has spoken the most through other people. Listening to other people can help you. Good people, good, virtuous, holy people that are seeking Christ, like they can be some of the best guideposts that the Holy Spirit leads on the way. So the listening skill is not just for others; it's also for us, and it's critical. We should be working to improve those skills all the time.
Well, that's why friendship is so important. I mean, good holy friendship is indispensable. I mean, I tell my best friend this all the time. I was like, dude, I would die without you. And he's like, you're being dramatic, but I would die without you. And
No
it's
lie,
just, and meanwhile, my wife is like, ugh. I'm like, hey, you can have your sisters and whatnot. I got my bro. And so I know everything's going to be okay. But there's a lot of truth in that. I mean, my my best friend, I've told him everything that's on my mind, even the intrusive thoughts that probably shouldn't see the light of day. I'll just say them, and I know that he's not going to respond negatively. He's going to accept it exactly where I'm at because it's not just trust, it's like another level of trust where you can have these sort of open conversations and know that there's not going to be any judgment, but that your brother will call you on your crap. That when you say something that's out of line, they go, well, no. But it's not mean spirited. It absolutely is a dialogue. And when you find people like that, um, if anyone is listening to this and they don't have somebody that comes to mind, that needs to be your number one goal in life. Is to find that person, and which probably means that you're not hanging out in the right spots.
Yeah.
Um,
Yes. Yeah.
so I'm not really sure.
Endorsed.
It's like, but it's so vital because and it, it's this interesting idea of storytelling. I'll get your thought on this. We've talked about having that same conversation over and over. What is it about people and wanting to tell the same story over and over again? Like, say you have a friend who, uh, you've told them this story that you think's funny, but they just listen again anyway, and they still laugh as if it's the first time you've heard it.
You think that's
Like,
good
there
listening?
has to be something there.
That's good listening.
but so okay, so I guess this is where I'm going with this. People say things all the time that isn't discerned beforehand. They're just sort of putting it out there. And maybe it's just a funny story, and maybe the details change a little bit over time, and whatever, that's fine. But what if you're talking to somebody and what they're telling you is completely off? I mean, just like Looney Tunes, the way they view the world is just absolutely crazy. We're still called to listen and actively listen and seek to understand. But what's the point at which we ought to say something, or
Well,
is there a point?
that's an interesting question. The but it depends on what we're listening to them for. So, yeah, if
Let's say a
this is
friend.
somebody, if this is a friend,
Yeah,
okay, people
not like
repeat.
best friend, but just someone
Yeah,
who
just
who
somebody in your circle, right? Somebody in
right.
your world, right? If people repeat stories, it's because they don't believe they've been heard. That's what I
Mm,
believe. As we get older, we might forget. But what helps us remember is when somebody actually listens to the story, which means participate. It's participation. So it's not for somebody says a story, and then you. One of the habits is listening for what's not said, listening for a main idea or a motivation for telling the story or why the story is important to them, and then just
mm,
offering that as an observation. It seems like, if they tell a funny story, it seems like this is like the most funny thing that's ever happened to you in your life. And they're like, yes, that's it. Like, and I can't believe it happened. It's when we acknowledge a story like that people don't have the need to repeat the story anymore.
mm,
Like, it's settled now. And what's settled also, by the way, is a relationship with you. You're a good listener. Like, that's where they will report later to someone, Dan's such a good listener. Well, it's because you heard what they weren't saying, which is the reason why they were saying it. Right? That's the
mm,
elegance of good listening. Right. And I said it's good listening to listen to the same story twice and have the same emotional reaction. Right.
mm.
It rewards the storytelling, it honors the relationship, and it builds trust. And so it made it easy for you. You knew what to do because you'd heard it before, but it's the act, right? It's that exchange that's so
Mm,
important. People. I would tell you, if people keep repeating stories to you, it's a training in humility, which is a training in listening, and you go with it. But try different listening habits, like summarize it, pull out the main idea,
mm,
repeat back the last few words to see if there's more, right? But people tell stories to make connections with others. And so if you have somebody that
mm,
tells lots of stories, especially the same story over and over again, they deeply desire to make connections with other people. You should listen for that. It's probably the unspoken motivation for the storytelling. And
mm.
again, it's because we're surrounded by people, but we're the most lonely people, the most pitiable people ever. Like, uh, and that's sad.
So what about the people who maybe they're not your close friends? Maybe it's someone you have to work with, or um, someone who's in your daily or weekly life, and they are saying things that are just outlandish, but they believe it's true. Like, what do
It's
you
a
do with
great
that?
question, sure. So, uh, hey, listening just got easier because it's the most interesting story in the world. If it's that outre, I mean, if it's that outlandish, then trying to understand it is all the motivation you need to ask
Mm,
great questions and make good summaries and dive into to paraphrase as a habit, the unspoken things. And
mm,
but I would say this is that there's a lot of that going on. I mean, there's a lot of psychosis and just bad thinking.
right.
And people, we're entering this age. I mean, we're fully out of Christendom in this country. Like,
Hmm.
there's no doubt. And I say that coming to you from the heart of the Shire, right? The Diocese of Wichita. Like, we are in a fully apostolic age, which means we're surrounded by uh, pagan pagan thoughts and heresies. And so uh, people have strayed far from the gospel. And in 21 years of law enforcement, I will tell you, things get really weird when people stray far from the gospel, and it's getting weirder every day. So you're going to run into stories that you don't agree with, and that, from your perspective, don't make sense, and you listen anyway. The beautiful thing about listening is, in no part of the system that I have been taught and I hand on to other people, do I have to agree with anything. And that's
Mm,
the beauty coming from a hostage negotiation perspective. My job is to listen, receive, reflect upon, enter into dialogue with, but never affirm.
mm.
I can't. By the very nature of why I'm there, they're doing almost everything wrong. So I
Right.
can't be like, well, that's great. In fact, it's only really in the dialogue stage, like as we move into, like as the dialogue develops and we move past venting all the emotions, like the hyper emotional behavior and words, they'll start doing small gestures of humanness, like small gestures of like good behavior, and we just jump all over that. Like, hey, thank you for that. Like you're going to start really rewarding that, but it's in the beginning. There's nothing there for you to say, hey, good job, because it's largely maladaptive, and so you'll see this outside of crisis negotiation now. People believing the craziest things and people thinking the weirdest things. And I would encourage everyone like out there to in order to build a relationship with that person so that you can support the truth, take their perspective without affirming it. Do you mean this? Yeah. Okay. I think I understand it. What we don't say is, oh, okay, well now I have to agree with it. No, that's a different thing.
Well, and I've heard a lot of people that will critique this sort of idea of accompaniment or listening as, well, you're just validating them. You're validating their bad ideas, you're validating the lifestyle or whatever the case might be. And I agree with you. I mean, that's ridiculous. If I'm validating it, you can be sure I'm going to say, wow, it's so great that you think that. Keep going, or good job. Um, but most of the time, if you say, well, I think I'm hearing this, or I think I understand this, then yeah, you're not validating it. You're just keeping the conversation going, seeking to understand, seeking to hear. Because if you can't portray someone else's argument or someone else's perspective better than them in some sense, then you really don't understand them at all. And then how can you actually enter into a dialogue with them?
Yeah.
I mean, it's not helpful. I mean, and I want the same thing for me. If someone is listening to me and they say, well, Catholicism is crazy, I would want them to
Endorse.
hear me out. Well, it is crazy. Yeah,
Endorse.
yeah, endorse that. Yeah, for sure. But it's a good crazy.
It is. If you like kind of
But it's
stuff, yeah.
but I would want someone to hear me out and then be able to at least explain what I just said, because at least they're trying to understand it. I mean, I cannot, I have no idea how to say this. I'm so frustrated just thinking about it. When
No,
someone critiques Catholicism, especially, and they haven't even tried to kind of understand the point, and they're just rehearsing the same old thing, that just drives me nuts.
yeah.
Like, I don't get mad at them. I get mad at the situation that sort of led to that, especially coming from North Carolina. It was the Bible Belt. I had a lot of Baptist friends said, well, y'all worship Mary. No, actually, we don't. And we can have a good conversation, but then they'll say, well, you commit idolatry, and they just lay it on. I just get so frustrated at this because it's exactly the opposite of what we're talking about here. It's the exact opposite of really truly seeking to understand what someone thinks and why.
Yeah, and I've heard this idea before when people talk about listening in a theological sense or a political sense. Actually, the most common thing right now is politically.
Right? Yeah.
So I come from two families that have a broad range, like put it all together and put it on a spectrum. We've got it. Like we pretty much have it covered, right? And I've always taken an interest in going to family reunions or meeting with family and just what do they think? What do they believe in? It's a conversation that I think is worthy of having. And then I've heard this before, particularly from my brothers and sisters who are well within inside the confines of the Catholic Church, who really do want to be evangelists. And they're like, well, but they're shouting the precepts of the church from the rooftop. And I'm like, that's great. Just nobody's up there.
No one's listening.
Yeah. And again, the model of Christ was not that. Like he had personal encounters and he listened. He didn't affirm. He never affirmed sin. And he never affirmed heresy. You would see him delay, though, right? He would let it all get out there and then say the perfect thing, like the one thing that had to be said. And it was when they were listening to him. And I think that's the model, is build a relationship, learn what they believe. And when they're ready, at that point, it becomes a simple exercise to say, well, have you thought about this? Hearing you talk about all that, an interesting feature of the liturgical life of the church that I think you would find fascinating, that you're already seeking, is this. Or, what you're saying reminds me of a saint. And the beauty of the saints, if they're not from a strict evangelical tradition, is that they're stories. They're all stories. There is nothing about the saints that's not a story, because it's been passed down in the tradition of the church. The church packages things in stories. There's a reason liturgy of the word exists the way it does. It is a complete story told in 3 millennia, and it's awesome. It's cool, and it grabs people emotionally, which is not a bad thing.
Mm-hmm.
Why the sacraments exist is because we have emotions and senses. But to do it that way speaks to people to their heart, and it's the way that we want to be spoken to. And so I respect when people want to draw a tall battlement around the truths of the church and shoot the first person that tries to cross the moat. And I'm like, but we want them on the inside. So I'm a firm believer in be faithful in building relationships with people as Christ would, and then let the Holy Spirit be fruitful, and be amazed when things go well. But you've got to listen to people, and you can't shut them down when they're telling you about the heresy they believe, because you haven't heard it all yet. Like there might be a variation at the end. You need to know what they believe so you can show them the truth. And so I guess Graham got it right.
He got a lot of things right. A few things were off, but he did get a lot of things right. And I think he was one that was really good at that too, because he was always interfacing with people, always listening and seeking to understand them. That's why he and St. John Paul II got along so well.
JP2 is who I would offer as the Catholic, compliment to that. Is just that dude. Yeah, the thing about to encounter someone to try to kill you that way.
Yeah,
And that's a story, right? So yeah, this idea of personal encounter, this idea of valuing people's story, so it's wrapped up in their own value of themselves. When you honor their story, you're honoring them. They'll open up and tell you those deep, dark things, right? This is what I believe, and I don't know why. I think it's crazy. And to resist the urge to say, yeah, it is, but just simply to dive deeper into that, eventually, like the right saint or the right precept or the right scripture or the right God gives. That's how God's going to tell you what to say, right? And that's in the gospel, right? He's going to tell us what to say. Well, I imagine if how he's speaking is through the person seeking him. That's the elegance of salvation history, right? He uses pretty amazing tools, and sometimes you're the tool, but sometimes the tool is them.
How does this or does this translate to listening sort of to ourselves, trying to seek self-knowledge? Self-knowledge is the beginning of wisdom. We can't be holy without self-knowledge, self-possession. Sure. So is there a way to actively listen to ourselves? I mean, everybody's got sort of an internal monologue going on, but I'm thinking more like in the context of prayer, like contemplative prayer, where we actually are quiet, seeking to see what God is revealing about us. I mean, is there any sort of analog here? Because I know it's not going to translate immediately, but is there any analog for listening to ourselves? Because I feel like a lot of times I don't listen to myself particularly well. I mean, I might listen to someone like I'm trying to convince them of something, because I know what I immediately want, and I go, well, you should want this. This is my internal dialogue, like, well, you should do this thing because that's what you actually want. And then 5 seconds later, the other voice goes, no, you want this, do that thing.
Yeah. I mean, first thing I tell people is just be careful about voices. Like, discernment of spirits is a thing. But there's the initial decision and work to become a better listener is often very active. And that's good, because receiving stories and being attentive and honoring stories is really its activity. It's questions and dialogue. It's mostly gentle observations if done well, summarizing. These are all active. One of the active listening skills is effective pause. And I would say that's kind of like the next level up as you get good at that dialogue phase. Like, to become a really masterful listener, you have to cultivate silence in your life. And that's a spiritual mastery as well. Like there are huge benefits for a spiritual life. But when you ask about like sorting out yourself, right, listening to yourself and your intellect, that can only be done in silence. And the danger there is you may have to go quite far to find silence these days. And again, because of the electronic media that can bring every song, movie, show ever created right to your eyes on a moment's notice. It's the greatest trick the devil will pull. It didn't believe, not making people believe it didn't exist. It's streaming services. And it could cultivate silence, whether that's in the form of Eucharistic adoration, whether that's in the form of going into the desert here in Lent, whether that's in the form, and I highly recommend it, of turning all that crap off when you drive and just driving in silence, particularly when you're by yourself. You'll find in the silence that God can speak to you, that you can speak to you, and that things get sorted out really well. I have had that practice. It has unnerved many a fellow traveler, but I just have a habit of not turning much on in the car when I'm in the car. And I think it's made a huge difference in my career as a hostage negotiator, in my ability to listen to people and to find things interesting, and to not, find at the 9-minute mark that my or 5-minute mark that my attention has waned. I can't recommend that enough, both in terms of spiritual, but also like profane knowledge and the ability, just in a secular sense, to listen well. I think listening is a global skill, and that if you're good at listening to God, you'll see the spiritual masters were also masters of listening to people. It might even be easier because they actually talk to you using words. And I think it's a global skill, and the more you cultivate silence and work on mastering listening as a habitude, as a set of habits, the more God can use you. That's one man's perspective, but I mean, I did it for 13 years, and that's what I would offer. If somebody came to me and said, I really want to get good at listening to God, it's like, well, first of all, master listening to people. He often speaks to them, and then cultivate silence in your life. God likes to speak in quiet moments. Like, it's very clear in Scripture. It's very clear in all the lives of the spiritual masters.
Yeah, there is no growth in holiness without silence and contemplation. Like, that's abundantly clear. But what I think was interesting in how you were explaining all that is there is a reciprocal sort of nature between the silence and the listening then. Right? So to be a good listener, you have to cultivate silence. But in order to find silence, you have to practice good listening first. I mean, that's how you put it. You put it both ways. So it's kind of interesting that
it's where you want to start.
Yeah, right. It's okay. So pick one, I guess. Which one do you need to work on more?
Yeah, and they're both at the same time. The cultivating the silence doesn't mean I'm not listening to you. It means when you can control the environment, choose silence. And when you can't, choose to invite stories. When you're listening to God, listen to God. And when you can't listen to God, listen to other people, because it'll probably be God moving you through them. Nothing happens without His will. And when I tell you this, understand this, I'm not talking about the annoying guy at work. I am not talking about the unruly child who always is cutting up in the back of the room. I'm talking about people on meth taking other people hostage. God has spoken to me through most, if not all, of the suspects and subjects that I negotiated with, most of whom were not criminals, most of whom were severely and persistently mentally ill and thinking about ending their life. And God can use them. So He can probably use your wife or your husband. He can probably use your teenager. And He does. But if we don't listen, this is my point. So if you don't have a habit of listening, think of all the wisdom and guidance God wanted to give you, and He couldn't, not through maybe the channel that he was hoping to use. He wasn't going to give you grace through that person. He'll have to find another way. So, yeah.
One of our chaplain at the high school I teach at, he said this multiple times in a homily. He says, God wants to give you grace today, and it's the only time He'll ever give you that grace. And I love that, because it's so simple, profound, true. But God is constantly, His graces are new every morning, and He does want to give us grace that He's never going to offer us again. And so we have a choice. We can either accept it or squander it. And to your point, how would we ever recognize it unless we're silent? Unless we have that internal silence, where we're actually engaged in what's around us. Because if we're just going from distraction to distraction, we're going to miss those opportunities. 100%.
Yeah, it's to understand that God has special graces for you ought to galvanize us to organize our spiritual life to receive them, because He can't give them. There is no, the divine economy is very strange like that. He doesn't recycle and reuse. Like, those were for you, and they were going to occur in a moment in time. And if you don't cooperate with His will, then you miss out. And that's a poverty. And yeah, and listening is a way to capitalize. It is a way to maximize that economy of grace giving, because it's an act of humility, no matter who you're listening to. And I think that's one of the primary conduits of grace is just being humble.
So you've mentioned a few of these habits of active listening, but if you would just can you summarize them for those listening, just to kind of give a little idea of things that we should be trying?
Yeah, absolutely. So the acronym is more pies. So I'll just run through the names. So minimal encouragers means the habits we have, the micro habits, you could say, of using a minimal amount of energy to provide a maximum level of encouragement for people to tell their stories. So this is attentiveness on steroids, right? It's like eye contact. It's nonverbal. It's your tone of voice, paraverbal communication. It's your body language. It's your facial gestures and expressions. It's maybe small vocalizations that you give to show that you're still interested. It is emotional attunement achieved by exclaiming something when you should, because why? Because it's authentic. It's a reaction to their story because you're actually listening. So that's him. O is open-ended questions. I would just add that there's a place for closed-ended questions too. Open-ended questions just points out the fact that we're generally not very good about keeping our questions open enough to invite stories. R is reflecting, which is when there's a good story going, sometimes when they pause, all you need to do is repeat a few words they just said to keep them going, or to generate interest, or show them that you'd like them to explain something a little bit more, just repeating it in the form of a question, right? If you were to say, yeah, I have a pretty interesting story about proposing to my wife, and I'd say, proposing to your wife? And then you would tell the story. E is emotion labels. Emotional labels are making a gentle observation about somebody's emotional state so that they can talk about that. They know it's safe to talk about, and to show that we're listening for emotions, which is, I think, the highest calling of the listener. So that's more pies. P is paraphrasing, and I already talked about that. That's the gentle observation about what's going on or something that's motivating them, driving the story that they have not said yet. So speaking the unspoken. O, P is, this is offering feedback in the form of our emotions as the listener. Should be done very rarely, but it can provide guidance and a demonstration of attunement. If I were to say, I'm disappointed when you say this because earlier you said that. As you can see, it's risky, but it's often very good for developing rapport if it's at the right time. The second E is effective pause. That's strategic silence. And the last letter is S for summarizing. And this is, 3 important things they said. Not breaking any new ground, but simply demonstrating that we are listening with a high degree of fidelity. Really, really important for relationship building. It also tends to unlock deeper levels of story because you've earned it. There you go. More pies.
Excellent. More pies is always good.
That was a quiz. I think I passed.
You did. So one of the things you said in there was that seeking to understand their emotional state is one of the highest goals.
Yeah, if you get that, you get everything else.
How does that work? I mean, walk me through that.
So, if story time, right? I remember one of my negotiators on my team was negotiating with a young man on the porch in like immediate commons area of a home in the south part of the town where I work. And the young man's got a knife, and he's agitated, he's animated, lots of energy, and he's very upset, right? And the point of this is self-directed harm, but also kind of open to homicide too, like very disorganized as you would expect from a teenage boy. And the negotiator is trying to understand the story. And here's where I'll say, like, everyone knows we should probably figure out why he's here and why he's got a knife. Okay. everyone knows the mission is to get them to put it down. But the path to that is listening of the sort that you would know the emotion. Because if you get the emotion, you get everything. And so that's why I chuckle. There's always the memes on the internet, especially on LinkedIn. It's like, don't listen to reply, listen to understand. I'm like, that's pretty good. But if you listen to demonstrate emotional attunement, you get everything. And so the negotiator's listening, and it's talking about, he says, he's labeling some emotions. You didn't get the right emotion. And then he realizes this young man's talking about his best friend cheating on him, cheating with his girlfriend, right? And so the negotiator figures, he's like, oh, it's like, you feel betrayed. He's like, yes, that's it. And then within a few seconds, he puts the knife down because that's it. That was the story. It's a story of betrayal. And if you don't understand that, you don't understand him. And if you don't understand him, he's not going to work with you. And so, I use that story as such a distillation of how powerful listening can be when you understand it's not just about facts. Facts are nothing. I could not talk to you, track down everyone you've talked to in the last 30 days, Will, and I can recreate your life and know the facts of it. But you know what will be missing? Is how you feel about all that. And if we're going to do business as a hostage negotiator does business with people, or as an evangelist does business with people, or as a best friend does business with people, I need to know how you feel about it. And you've got to tell me. And I can only create that environment if I listen to you authentically.
That's such a powerful testament to what I think is missing in a lot of the circles that I frankly inhabit. I mean, I tend to be more conservative, generally speaking, politically. I'm definitely Catholic. But what I've seen with my Catholic conservative friends is they are so drawn like moths to the flame to folks like Ben Shapiro saying facts don't care about your feelings. Well, apparently Dan cares about your feelings. And like that should matter to us. Like I always bristle at that because I'm like, I want people to care about my feelings. Like, yeah, facts don't care about your feelings, fine. But human beings care about other people's feelings. They should. I mean, I remember hearing another, it was on a podcast years ago. It's like 5 or 6 years ago now. And they said, well, it doesn't matter whether we have tact. Like, we just need to tell them the truth. And it doesn't really matter the way that you say it. It's got to be true. Well, that's like completely the opposite of what.
They're right.
In what way?
They're right. But if I was listening to them at that moment, I would say it seems like your mission in telling the truth untactfully is to feel good telling people the truth. And if that's the case, then you're right. You can just, in fact, probably the more untactfully you tell them, the better you'll feel about pronouncing the truth from the rooftop. Now, if your mission was to help them find the truth so that they can live a better life, well, then you failed. But again, it's all about your mission and purpose. And so you could be right to say that. It's all about, you just tell them the truth untactfully. I'm like, yeah, 100%. If it's about you, then you're good. If it's about them, then you're probably misguided. And I always should say this: you're putting the Holy Spirit at an incredible deficit to convert that person because you're not cooperating with the Holy Spirit. They're gonna the Holy Spirit will do all the work on this one. You're not being a very good vessel for him. Instead, I would say, I mean, this is my thing. Is that I was like that. Oh my gosh, I was like that when I was young and passionate about proclaiming the truth, and I was misguided, and I probably missed some opportunities to bring people to Christ because the real thing is humility. It's much harder, and that's how you know it's of Christ, right? It's much harder to do that. It takes a lot more discipline and humility to listen to somebody over months until they're like, okay, now I want to hear, what do you have to tell me? And say, oh, are you sure? Well, then one thing I keep going back to is St. Augustine. I keep going back to your talk about your struggles with chastity, your talk about your struggle with the truth and political power. It's like St. Augustine, like, you should definitely read the Confessions, like, definitely. And if you tell them that on day 1 in minute 5, they'll never read the Confessions.
Yeah,
you can buy them the copy and send it to them, signed by St. Augustine. They're never going to read it. But if you wait 3 months over 9 conversations, they'll go buy it themselves. I don't buy people books, right? Because I want them to invest, right? And so that's the difference in the approaches. The older I get, the more I realize that leavening in time is an act of humility, and that it's critical, and that maybe this is like the foundation of it. The older I get, the more I recognize that truth is a person, and his name's Jesus, and he had emotions, and he understood that. And every when you see him caring for people, he understood that we have emotions because he has them too, and that's part of the equation that should never be stripped out. And so therefore, truth has emotions. With all respect to Mr. Shapiro, who I think is very well intentioned and very intelligent, emotions matter, and they matter for relationships, and they matter for truth.
And this seems like something that we can work with in our own examination of conscience. I mean, what are our intentions? Not just the sins that we're committing, but like what led us to. I could see this especially as part of an examine at the end of the day, like looking back over the interactions of the day and saying, like, what was my intention there? What was my goal? Was it to win?
Yeah.
Or was it to actually lead us both to truth? If you have a potentially negative conversation with someone.
Sure. And listening skills are no like any other skills. You have to take stock of how things went so you can improve. What's great is you're cataloging stories that belong to other people. And so you're recalling relationship, you're recalling like every vestige of community when you do that. And it's a wonderful examine, both spiritually, but also like socially, like also in terms of like human community. And what's beautiful is you're doing it all at the same time. It's like the P90X of spiritual growth. It's like there's this elegance to listening, and I wish more of the spiritual masters talked explicitly about listening, but they do when you read. When you read, they're describing this interconnectedness of like humans and their stories and their emotions, and it's so important, right? The personal encounter and personal invitation, like all the evangelists. When you read the Gospels, there they are, right? And so to that point, then there's this elegance where we become better humans, but also better Christians for better listeners. In fact, I teach listening in a corporate environment. It's also leadership. Like, I don't come in and talk about leadership theory. I train them to be active listeners, and it's amazing how much better leaders they are when they know how to listen to people's stories. And how much better their decisions get when they have that clarity. They can go actually listen to the 3 people they need to and be like, I know what I need to do. And now just take courage. That's the only other ingredient. So yeah, no, there's this elegance to becoming a better listener. You begin to do lots of things better. Anything you're doing with people, for instance, is going to get better. So
yeah, what struck me there was I was just thinking about the virtue of magnanimity. I mean, the ability to draw out in others the best in them, to unite for a common goal. Like, you can't do that without being a good listener. So it makes sense that that'd be so vital to leadership. I'd be interested, like, if you were to define leadership, because everybody's got their own sort of definition. Like, how would you define it?
Oh, it's doing hard work with and through other people. Yeah, you could call it. I like to use the word team there because you have to create that too. Sometimes it's baked in. Sometimes you inherit a team, but oftentimes you have to forge this idea amongst those people that they are a team, that they have common goals and a common purpose, and that their skills are complementary. Like, and we can trust each other and move fast, right? Like, so there's a lot in that word. But so what the essence of it is just to accomplish hard work, to take risks with other people. And that other people's doing a lot of work in that definition, but and listening is where it's at. So what's interesting is having led like men and women into danger, for 21 years in law enforcement, for oh my gosh, now I got to do some math, but for 14 of them, I was a sergeant, and to ask other people to do things that are not just risky and crazy, but dangerous, right? There has to be a lot of listening that happens before the dangerousness. Like, they have to know that, Sergeant Oblinger knows what the heck he's saying, and you can't convince them of that like a salesman. Like, that comes through building a relationship with people, so they know that you're magnanimous, right? That at least you're seeking it. And I love magnanimity because it's different than ambition. I mean, it's really close to ambition, but the difference is that you desire to be worthy of the greatness, right? That's the key. That's what makes it magnanimous, and not just blind power ambition, or to be great in the sense of maybe like the secular dictators. It's to be worthy of that high calling. And a deep like discipline of listening, like a deep training in listening. It's what makes you worthy of being a good leader. That's, again, I'm biased. I'm the listening Kool-Aid guy, but I've seen it too often in too many spheres of leadership for it not to be something to that.
No, I'd fully, as you say, endorsed. I would say absolutely. I think there's so much more to say, but I'd like to end here because I think that's a good place to end.
Yeah, you've got 2 episodes, probably. You might have to continue part of it.
Well, and I'd love to have you back on sometime if you're down for it to talk about another aspect of listening. But for now, what are you up to? I mean, if you're now retired, I mean, where can I send people? I suppose
It's LinkedIn.
Okay.
So I'll be doing a bunch of other things now. So, I mean, where am I at now? Spiritually, I'm reading a book called I Believe in Love by Father Delby, which is basically a transcribed or a documented long retreat on Saint Teresa's spirituality. So it's pretty amazing. Blew my mind. So spiritually, that's where I'm at. In terms of employment, I'm beginning a consultancy for counter-human trafficking work, which is, we didn't talk about any of that today, but that was also that I did that for 10 years for the police department. So I'm beginning to transition into kind of an NGO role, doing consulting with communities and law enforcement agencies about their counter-human trafficking efforts. So I'll be doing
that'll
that.
definitely be the sequel because
Okay.
and I'm very honestly, I've been actually looking for someone to talk about human trafficking. So
Okay.
I'd love to have you on again at some point to talk about that because that would be it's definitely on people's radar because of Sound of Freedom. And thanks be to God, I mean, it should be on everyone's radar.
It should be on everybody's radar because the solution lies in everybody. Then the last piece, probably the most relevant for this episode, was I'll be continuing to do my work in the private sector, training cultures about active listening and negotiation. The people I work with the most tend to be civil engineers or consulting engineers and construction managers. That's just, they're my people. I have a ton of clients in that space, but certainly if you're out there like, well, that's not me. Well, maybe I can help you or point you in the right direction, or we can still do business together. I don't have a lot of rules. So yeah, LinkedIn, Dan Oblinger, hostage negotiator, you'll find me.
Excellent. Well, Dan, thanks so much for coming on.
That's great. And you know what? If you're out there going, I don't have a company, I'm not being trafficked by traffickers, like, how can I get better at listening? Well, if you go to Amazon, I have 3 books on Amazon, and I would recommend one of them, only one of them. The other 2 come later. But Life or Death Listening on Amazon by me is a great place to start. But if you reach out on LinkedIn and say, I listen to Will's podcast, I have a question for you, like, I'm going to answer. I don't have like a social media team. It's just me. Yeah. So, and I'd love to chat. It's my passion. It's my jam. So if you're ever in Wichita, I'll buy you a cup of coffee. How about that?
Excellent. Well, thank you so much for listening to Good Distinctions. If you would, go to gooddistinctions.com to be a free or paid subscriber to continue all the things I'm trying to do with Good Distinctions to reignite good conversation, seek out the best distinctions, and inspire others to do the same. And it's absolutely complementary to what Dan's doing. So definitely go check him out on LinkedIn and buy his book on Amazon and pray for him as he transitions into this new phase in his life. Dan, thanks.
Thanks, Will.